or some sort of middle-aged MILF. Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. Today's video, I wanted to answer the 5 most common questions that I receive all the time when it comes to Chinese bikes. Now, these questions and answers, and just this video in general, is not intended to make anybody feel stupid about the questions they've asked me, because I don't believe there are any stupid questions out there when it comes to Chinese bikes. However, we do need to think a little bit more critically about the questions that we ask in order to achieve the actual answers that you want about Chinese bikes. So without further ado, guys, here are 5 common questions and answers when it comes to Chinese bikes. Alrighty, guys, so question number 1 that I get all the time: how is the quality of the frame or the brand? And to be honest, asking the quality of a frame is such a generic question that it's really impossible to answer, because quality can mean a lot of different things depending on who you ask. Are you asking me what the quality of the paint job is? Are you asking me if there's any defects on the frame? Are you asking me if the derailleur hanger is put on straight? I don't know. Those are all questions that you have to figure out for yourself. So I think a better question to ask when it comes to Chinese bikes, instead of tell me about the quality, is there anything out of the norm with the bike versus a typical bigger name band bike out there? Question number 2 that I get all the time: how did I choose the frame size for my bikes? And again, that's a really difficult question to ask, because there are so many variables when it comes to the frame size. You have to figure out how tall you are, what your inseam is, how flexible you are, what type of rider are you? Are you pretty aggressive on the bike? I, for myself, I'm pretty aggressive and aero when it comes to my fit, so I typically size down a size. So I'm 6 feet tall, which is like 183 centimeters, and I typically go for frames that are a size 54, because I always plan to run a long stem on it. So these are all questions that you have to ask yourself that I myself can't really answer for you. And if you aren't really sure on your size, the best thing to do is to compare geometry sizes for these frames on the various websites of these bike brands. And if that still doesn't work for you, then I suggest that you go get a professional bike fit. Check out that view, guys. We are just north of the city here at the beginning of the North Shore. Such a peaceful place here, although it is kind of grimy and disgusting because all the snow is melting. And of course, got to do a quick bike check. So I bet in the brakes on my rear brakes, but for some reason they still kind of squeal, and I'm not exactly sure why. Question number 3 that I get all the time is, can you tell me about the performance of the bike? And again, I don't know what you mean by performance. Do you mean like in the sense of racing the bike, how stiff it is, how does it accelerate, how does it feel when you're sprinting? I don't know. These are all questions that you have to figure out for yourself first. So if you're someone who only rides recreationally, then the question of performance is going to be different versus someone who is using these bikes for racing or cyclocross, crits, road races, whatever they are. So if you're going to ask the question of how does it perform, being more specific is going to be beneficial for you to get the answer that you truly want in terms of performance. Check that out, guys. That is the Baha'i Temple here on the North Shore. Anyway, all right, guys, unfortunately I can't ride and record at the same time because the winds is so crazy. I think I have to get some sort of wind cat for my bike. Question number 4 that I get all the time, which is, how do these Chinese bikes compare to the major bike brands out there? And to me, I'm just like, what do you mean, how do they compare? In terms of what? If you're asking how they compare in terms of price, yeah, they are definitely a lot more affordable. But you got to understand that a frame like a Dangfu or a Velo build that costs $500 or $600 USD, you shouldn't expect the same experience as you would of a bike that costs $8,000 or $9,000, $10,000. Not to mention that I've never ridden like a Tarmac SO7 or any of these super high-end bikes. So who am I to say or be able to compare these Chinese bikes to those bikes? So if you are looking for some sort of validation because you've only spent $600 on your bike, I'm not going to be the guy to do that for you. And I would have to say, if you are looking for validation on your cheap Chinese bike compared to an $8,000 bike, then that might be a whole other different conversation. But I'll leave it at this. You definitely get a lot of bike for your money with these Chinese frames, but it would just be completely unfair to compare them to bikes costing 6 or even 7 times the price. Man, I tell you, it seems like every time I try to record video here for these vlogs, there's always some interruption, whether it's wind, a chainsaw going off, a 18-wheeler trying to run me off the road, or some sort of middle-aged MILF mom trying to talk to me, if you know what I mean. Question number 5 that I get all the time is, if you only had money for one Chinese bike or frame, what would it be? And to that, I would say buy whatever you can afford, whatever your maximum budget is on these Chinese bikes. Definitely go that route. And also figure out, do you want an aero bike? Do you want a lightweight bike? Do you want an endurance bike? These are all factors that you have to decide for yourself. So all the Chinese bikes that I have so far, I purposely try to pick out different styles of riding. I myself, for these Chinese bikes, I have aero bikes, I have endurance bikes, and I also have lightweight bikes. Now they all do different things, so it's tough to say one for one how I would compare them one for one. So for you, if you can only have one bike, you need to figure out what sort of rider you are, and then figure out the maximum budget you're willing to spend on these Chinese frames. Send them an email and then start to work that out with the customer service. So that is going to wrap up today's video, guys. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below. And I will check you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace. It seems like whenever I try to record, there's always something loud happening, whether it's a chainsaw, a truck, wind, squirrels, someone trying to run me off the road, middle-aged woman trying to holler at me.